Okay, so this is the thing with Hawkeye. So, like, ever since we announced that we were going to do Hawkeye on this show, you've been complaining.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and I've been like, you know what? It's Marvel, so at its worst, it'll be fine. You know, just kind of like with Captain America and or Falcon and Winter Soldier, like it'll be fine. And like up until like this was a 6 episode series, 5 episodes done. I was like, that's what my thought was. Yeah, it's fine. And then last night I watched the series finale. And I don't know what your guys' opinion on this is, but I thought this thing shit the bed hardcore. I think it not only shit the bed, I think it kind of filled the bed. I thought it was pretty fucking horrendous in a lot of respects.
I thought the whole thing was terrible. Yeah. It was
I don't know. Like, I know, like, I missed details probably from other shows, so there were things that I felt were confusing. I mean, the last episode is going to be an action. That's what I was expecting, I guess.
Yeah, this whole series for me was like taking Marvel's medicine, where you have to do it, but you're just trying to do it to keep up with the storyline, with the universe. But this show in particular, it's not very good. I didn't enjoy going back to each episode.
So, I think if we're going to talk about it, we'll maybe talk about things a little bit out of like show direction and just start more chronological because. So apparently after Thanos' snap, half people disappeared.
Yeah.
At some point we learned that Natasha's sister had disappeared.
Yeah.
Yelena. Another thing. So like after that happened, apparently like Clint's family disappeared.
Yes.
And like it sounds basically like he just freaked out. Like
he became Ronin.
He went into Ronin, like he put down his bow and arrow and picked up a sword, which is kind of weird. But basically, for like 5 years or something, he ran around just like slicing people up.
Yeah, he became a hardcore vigilante and just started, wiping bad guys out.
So at some point during this, Kingpin contacted him because he wanted one of his lower level like lieutenants or gang members taken out, and he gave him information. And so this guy, he has a daughter, and like she's deaf and she has like a fake leg, but basically he's teaching her to be like a ninja skill warrior, whatever. But
yeah, she took like a bunch of martial arts classes.
But Ronan has this information, so he goes to this gang and basically he just slices everybody up, kills everybody, and her father is one of those. So at some point, she's going to come into the story, and she's got this revenge kick going.
Yeah.
So, okay, so this is kind of the history. So, and apparently at the end of this 5 years, Natasha catches up with him and somehow gets him out of this cycle or space or something. And then I guess that's the point where they go on the mission with the Avengers.
Yeah. Yeah, you kind of get that story in the Avengers movie where first you see him as Ronin, and then, eventually...
I guess I didn't really pick up that too much because I was a little bit confused. Okay, so there's going to be more confusing stuff. So if we the one other thing is like I guess it must have been during the Thor movie where was it Thor or was it one of the Avengers movies where all the flying things came in the city?
That's the first Avengers movie.
First Avengers. So basically, this rich family, they've got this gigantic house, but they have views of this fight that's going on. Part of their wall gets blown out. And of like all the superheroes she could see, she sees Hawkeye, and she gets fixated on this guy. He's like, I want to be like this guy.
Well, he does essentially save her life because...
this is I didn't mention this is a different kid from a rich family, but yeah, okay.
Right. Well, he does save her life right there because the one guy on the flying thing is coming right at her, and he shoots
an arrow
it out of the way.
Okay. I kind of don't remember that. Like, he must have been, like, he was falling and shot an arrow or something.
I think he shoots that first, and then does the thing off the building. Anyway, she sees it and she's kind of gobsmacked by it.
But yeah, so this kid, she starts taking archery or stuff as she's growing up. So,
and martial arts too, I think.
Yeah, so she's trained, not by him,
Right.
but trained. And then,
Kate Bishop.
Right, Kate Bishop. And we cut to, well, it opens on her, and she's doing some side mission. I didn't understand why exactly.
No, well, she was, it opens, she like shoots that bell.
Right. Why was she doing that?
Just a bet with her friends.
Yeah.
And, okay, so she shoots the bell. It doesn't do anything. She shoots the rope, and the clanger bangs the bell or whatever.
Right.
And somehow this makes the entire building collapse.
Which, that building was going to come down if that's all it took.
Right. It just needed, like, somebody to go.
Yeah. That bell was going to come down, whether it was her or not.
Yeah, that was retarded. And then, so, like, she's in, a little bit of legal trouble with this, right?
Yeah.
So this is confusing, but God, there's so much confusing shit. It's like
Pretty sure her mom like made a big donation to the school and she was okay after that.
That's probably it. Because, they got money. Okay, so it's kind of present day. She's like 18 or 20 or something.
22, I think she says.
And so they're having like a big party at her house, and her mom is dating this new guy. And she thinks he's weird, and there's so many hints that he's weird or something's wrong with him. Like, they really try to direct you in this direction.
To thinking he's a criminal.
Right. And so she kind of doesn't like him, but they're having this big party, and they're announcing their engagement. Well, she doesn't know they're engaged. But
Right,
like,
she finds out at that party.
That guy, the fiance's dad, like, he's at the party, he comes up to her, and he's like, man, he's making a huge mistake. What the fuck is he thinking or whatever? And like basically he just hates on her mom in front of her. And like, yeah, he's kind of like, he seems like a piece of shit old guy. And also it shows the relationship between the father and the son is pretty rocky. But this is weird because also at this party, like there's catering, but also like there's secret catering down into the basement where they're having an
auction,
underground auction. God, it gets stupider. So at this auction, they're auctioning off Ronin's, like his cape, his cloak, and his sword. And so the fiance, he's trying to bid on the sword, and his dad, also bids on the sword just to fuck with him. And then the dad wins the auction, and then they're auctioning the cloak, and I don't think they finished that.
Right, because it's at that point the Russian guys break in.
Right, the Russian mob break through the wall to steal this stuff. No, they're trying to steal a watch.
They're trying to steal a watch, which
is Tony Stark's.
Skipping to the end, it seems like that is like a shield watch that belongs to Hawkeye's wife. But we've never established really who she is other than Hawkeye's wife. And this show doesn't really establish who she is either. So I didn't really understand the significance of the watch. Did you?
No, sure. I think it was just some sort of... it was just his souvenir that she kept for remembering him.
So there's all this going on. And we didn't really cover Clint, but Clint's story is basically like his family went out to the country for Christmas. He's supposed to meet him like the next day. It's like 4 or 5 days. So it's a ticking clock to Christmas. So he has to get home for Christmas.
Right.
But somehow he's also at this party / auction. Like he was present, right?
No, he was just in town with his family.
Okay, so he wasn't there for that part.
They remember after he sees her on in the Ronin suit on the news.
Okay, right. So when the mafia breaks into the auction, she grabs a cloak and puts it on, so nobody recognizes her or something. I don't know. And like the fiance, he grabs the blade and disappears.
Right.
And then there's a big fight. Okay, and then I don't know. Eventually, it dissipates, right? She kicks some ass and whatever.
Yeah.
Now, here's what I'm confused. Like, she had the cloak, and then somehow somebody else gets the cloak. What was the? Because there's a scene. Okay, so basically, this live action role play, this LARPing group, somehow somebody in that group ends up with the cloak.
Well, really quick, here's what happened. She has a cloak. She eventually breaks in to the old guy's house, finds out he's been stabbed to death. So she suspects Jack.
Right. This is more of the red herring stuff, the fiance Jack. But like at some point, like he's shown to be a master swordsman, and so does the girl.
Yeah. In fact, I believe there's a character in the comics called the Swordsman, and that's him.
But like the old guy, the dad, basically he had been cut in half almost by like obviously a sword. And so you're like, okay, so this was probably Jack or the girl, like, fuck this old guy up, right? And we'll come to it, but this is a red herring.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, because she, before that, she walks in on a heated conversation between her mom and that old guy.
Right.
And so right there, I'm like, well, her mom's obviously, like, a criminal of some
right,
sort.
she seems shady.
And then when we find that guy's dead, I'm like, well, her mom had something to do with it.
Yeah, right.
So that wasn't a big surprise. But yeah, basically after she leaves that guy's place, the Russian guys track her down. They start getting into a conflict, and she locks herself inside a car. A mysterious figure starts helping her out. We find out that's Clint. And episode 1 ends with him pulling off the mask and being like, what the fuck? It's a girl.
Right. Because he was going to just like bash her face in.
Yeah. So real quick, episode 2, they go to her apartment. She took in this stray dog. They end up calling it Pizza Dog. It likes to eat pizza.
Right. She was part of the mafia fight. Like she rescued him from being like hit by a car.
Right. And basically the Russian guys have followed him to her apartment. They start throwing Molotov cocktails in, so they have to leave. And they leave the suit in the apartment.
Okay.
And then he comes back later to get the suit, and that's when he find out the firefighting LARPing guy.
He took the firefighter.
Which, by the way, was a really convenient breadcrumb. You know,
I guess.
he just happens to see this LARPing sticker on this firefighting thing, and that leads him to.
True.
I hated that whole fucking LARPing story of
it was kind of an awful way to introduce a couple characters, and also like, yeah, it wasn't. I don't know. It didn't make sense. But yeah, I guess I didn't catch that part where the firefighter took it or whatever, because I was like, how the fuck did this guy get it, and how do they know him?
Well, eventually,
because somebody was like, oh, so and so at the LARPing has it.
what he does is he looks up that LARPing group on his phone, and there's a video of that black guy putting on the costume and playing with it. There's a lot of convenient bullshit.
But yeah, he has to go down this LARPing group, and he gets pulled in this whole thing where he has to like lose a LARPing to this guy, so he'll give him his suit back.
Yeah.
And so he goes through all that bullshit, and now apparently these LARPers are their friends and allies.
Yeah, I mean, God, I'm not going to be able to remember in detail how all this pieces together.
I watched it just now, and I don't remember.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a little convoluted. So we get that. I know at some point, like her and Clint end up with kind of like a shootout with the mob or whatever.
Well, remember, they end up getting tied to like those horse things.
Oh, that's right, because
Yeah.
for some like convoluted reason, Clint thinks he can protect her by just walking into the mob and like talking with them.
Yeah, he thinks if he talks to their boss, he can sort shit out.
Right, so he just goes down there and like they immediately tie him up. And then like so he's going through this interrogation. And he's like, I don't know her. And then at that point she falls through
The
ceiling
Yeah.
and lands right in front of them.
They
So then
capture
they're
her.
both tied up.
And like she has this like helpful conversation with one of the bad guys, which I know is supposed to be like lighthearted for the show and
All right,
stuff.
he was in a relationship issue or
Yeah,
something.
it was
She gave
just
him
so.
advice.
It felt so out of place, so corny. You know, it didn't feel right.
By the way, a couple things we haven't touched on is if one, Hawkeye is kind of deaf due to all of the explosions he's endured, so he wears a hearing aid.
I actually thought that was kind of a nice touch.
Yeah, I like that. And then also his youngest son is deaf, and they kind of use sign language. There was one dialogue spot that like took me a minute to even realize what the fuck they were doing, because like when him and the Echo Woman first start talking, like he's signing and he says something like about a cookie, and I'm like, the fuck? And then like it takes me a minute to get it to where like, oh, like he tries to sign with his son, but he isn't good at it, so like he only knows like a few words, I guess. But it was a weird sentence, and I was like, what the fuck does that mean? And then I actually had to think about it for a minute before I let that registered with me that that's what they were getting at. Right. I don't know if that happened to you guys or not, but it confused me. I didn't catch that one. It confused me at first. And then, yeah, eventually he breaks his bonds there, and like they get in a like really like not good looking fight.
Yeah, it seems kind of random, but that leads them to goes to the
car chase,
and the special arrows,
which I guess that scene was okay.
Well, I mean, I guess like having special arrows kind of makes him a little more superhero, because he actually has
some of them are a little ridiculous though.
Well, here's another thing. There's like some of them. Like he shoots and it incapacitates one person. I was like, oh, that seems like something an arrow could do.
Yeah, he could just shoot them with that thing. Yeah.
He could have just used an arrow.
But
that Pym arrow was insane. Like I thought that was over the top even.
Which one?
The one that like got huge when he shot it.
Oh yeah, he's like shoot one up in the air, and then he shoots it with the Pym arrow, and it becomes big, and then it like comes down and like breaks their car like in half or whatever, just smashes it.
Right.
It was very impressive that she shot that into the air, and it came all the way back down on a moving target. Like it was just so wow.
A lot of ridiculous shit in this show that doesn't make sense. I remember after that, like they like take the subway like back to the.
So I'm gonna hit like what I was talking about earlier. Is like. So Spider-Man has kind of a special suit from Stark. Stark has like dozens of Iron Man suits, and like he must hate Clint as much as I do. Because he's like, take your fucking arrows. He couldn't even just like give him a loaner, like here, borrow this. I feel bad. Somebody's going to kill you.
I mean, we do find out, though, he's got... Because you remember they showed some of his special arrows say Stark on him. So he apparently does have,
one of his arrows did say Stark.
He apparently does have some arrows, but yeah, Tony...
He had the one that made it bigger. He also had like an Ant-Man one. Maybe those were both Ant-Man ones, because bigger and a little smaller.
But the suit would get in the way of him shooting his little bow and arrow.
Well, apparently he's good with a sword. Yeah. Because he didn't need it when he was Ronin.
He might be better with the sword, actually.
Well, there was like one fight scene, and you know how they're like, it's kind of like the Batman thing where like, this man gets grabbed, this man gets grabbed, this man... It's like, he's like instantly teleporting from here to here to here to here to pull off these... little hits he's doing. It's like, this doesn't make sense. It's too chaotic.
God, I don't even remember the sequence of things, but eventually, like, they find Echo's apartment, and like they end up getting in a fight on a rooftop with Echo and Yelena. She comes in.
Like, she just kind of shows up at the end randomly, and you're like, what the fuck was that?
Yeah, so she's fighting everybody, and Echo's fighting everybody. Like, they're all just... It's a free-for-all.
Another thing I don't really get... So, first of all, like, if you didn't watch the Black Widow movie, like, you have no reference of Yelena and, her thing. I think briefly...
Like, I knew who she was, but not any real details.
They briefly touch on it. But there's some things that confuse me, because... Skipping to the last episode, like, Kate tells her mom, like, you hired a Black Widow to kill Clint, and she basically acknowledges that that's true. But the reason that confuses me is because the post-credit scene of Black Widow is Julia Louis-Dreyfus's character basically sending Yelena to Hawkeye. So I'm like, how does that all work
together?
Yeah, I didn't understand how that ties together.
That might be like a communication
and also
issue.
The Black Widow she's not usually portrayed just as like a hitman, right? She's usually working for like a agency.
Well, that's kind of another weird part because it's like, oh, they hired me. And it's also like, oh, this is personal. I'm going to kill you because I hate you.
That's the other thing. It seems more personal than business with her wanting to kill Clint.
Yeah, that was a little strange.
And also, it doesn't really make sense that she thinks that Clint killed Natasha.
Right. Like, she has no idea what the story is. But, like, whatever he's selling, she's not buying.
And did Natasha... Well, maybe she... I mean, I saw Black Widow once and I liked it, but I don't think they referenced Hawk. I would have just thought that they would have, off screen had a conversation about how Clint was her friend,
Yeah, I don't know.
But maybe I'm wrong. This is skipping forward, but so like end of they reference a couple times. There's some head honcho that controls the Russian mob.
A couple hints. The big guy.
Right, the big guy. And at the end of episode 5, we see a still photo that Yelena takes of Kate's mom talking to D'Onofrio as the Kingpin.
Right.
And I'm like, finally, this show's heating up. It's getting a little exciting, right? This is one of the reasons I hated the season finale so much, is they kind of ruined the Kingpin for me. Because what I liked about Kingpin in the Daredevil show was like he was intimidating, not because he would fight if he was in a corner.
Yeah, he could fight.
But the reason he was intimidating was because of like his mind and like his strategy and his like the way he was ruthless and would, he was scary in that way.
He had a definitely presence.
Yes. And I mean, first of all, like, not only does he fight a lot in this, like, towards the end, he's got to be a metahuman, right?
Right. It's ridiculous.
Because first,
he goes
he
through.
rips off a car door with his bare hands. Yeah. He gets hit by a car. It doesn't faze him.
Right. He pretty much gets straight up from being hit by a car.
He eventually, after fighting with Kate, gets fucking blown up with an explosive.
Yeah, like a stick of dynamite.
Yeah.
It's like ridiculous.
So he's got to be a metahuman. Eventually, we'll just skip to it. Echo apparently shoots him, but I'm sure...
Yeah, that's off screen.
It's off screen. And so, I mean, well, they did him so dirty, maybe they did just kill him. Maybe it would be better if they did. But, yeah, I'm sure he's going to pop up.
Yeah, I hope not.
Well, they announced... That's another thing, is before this show was even done, they announced that they're going to do an Echo series.
Right.
And, like, I'm not super intrigued by her character.
Not at all.
Like... I'm sure I'll watch it, but yeah, this did not make me like, oh God, I gotta see an Echo show.
Right, and at some point she'd had a interaction with Clint where he was like, "Your boss." I think we talked about this briefly, but her boss had told him the info on the clan. So
yeah,
essentially it was Kingpin's orders that got her dad killed.
Yeah, so like they have that big fight, and he's like convincing her during the fight, like. They're manipulating you and this and that. Yeah.
One thing you mentioned earlier, and I think you might be right, but they never really spelled it out. But it doesn't really make sense to me, is so like Kingpin was definitely planning on killing Echo's dad. But did he actually hire Clint to do it? Because my thought was Clint ultimately was trying to take down the Kingpin.
Well, I think basically it sounded like he'd just given him intel because he knew like he was out there killing people, and like if he had the info and the time and the place, like he was just going to take care of it.
Oh, so basically Kingpin just kind of breadcrumbed Ronin.
Right, he just led him into it or whatever.
Oh, okay, that makes a little more sense, I guess.
Why did he get him killed though? Like, what was his plan?
I don't know. Apparently Kingpin wasn't happy with him for some reason. I don't think it really says.
Also, and this is probably from these shows being so condensed and being only 6 episodes, but at the beginning of the last episode, like, Echo basically has this conversation with Kingpin where she says, like, oh, now I realize I just got to let this go, let the ghost go or whatever. And she apologizes to him and she leaves. And then but he instantly knows like, oh, she's turned on me. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I like that or not. I thought they could have maybe...
You're talking with Echo or the mom?
Between Echo and Kingpin.
Oh, okay.
Like the fact that he just instantly knows that like...
Well, I thought like during the conversation he kind of gives a clue, like, how did you all of a sudden like, stop hating Ronan? Like, why are you all of a sudden changing your mind? She explains it, but you could tell he kind of doesn't buy it.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
But also, is there something where like after her dad died, was he like a dad figure to her?
I think they did kind of.
Maybe. Because they also, like, at some point, they're like, I love you, but it was kind of weird.
Yeah. I think they do maybe have a father-daughter type kind of relationship. Okay, I gotta get to it. The thing, besides the Kingpin stuff, that drove me crazy during the last episode is the action became straight-up Looney Tunes to me. Where... God, there was so much stuff I hated in this fucking episode. Like, first of all, that bit where he gets stuck in the tree and he just can't, like...
Right, he's just basically chilling there.
You're telling me that he can't just kind of, like, get his down on his own.
Or use, like, a grappling hook or something.
Yeah, he doesn't have... I mean, that made him look even useless than we all think he is.
Yeah, he's just like hanging there. It's like,
Like I said before, I fucking hate the LARPing people and that whole thing where they like put on their LARPing outfits and then just tell people to, run this way, I'm like, cut all those fuckers out. Those are so unnecessary. I fucking hate them.
Yeah.
And then... Where were the cops in this episode? So
I think those were the cops. The LARPers were
like cops and firemen. But no, here's the thing that like pissed me off is like so that one guy starts basically like sniping this building in this ritzy part of New York, and all these rich people are running out on the street. You're telling me none of those people called the cops? Those cops in an area like that would be on that shit. Toot sweet. This isn't like the fucking hood where they're like, oh no, maybe we'll sit this one out. They would be
straight SWAT.
This is a ritzy area of New York. They would fucking be there in a heartbeat. Not only that, so then it gets to where they have that stupid fucking fight on the ice skating rink. I fucking hated this so bad. I can't even tell you. Like
so many arrows, so many special arrows.
Well, the thing about it is, like...
Another funny thing is, like, he's like, we need to get off this ice. And then they just start shooting people, and they basically kill everybody on the ice.
My thing is, if you're going to have people fight with a bow and arrow, fine. Then don't put them in a situation where it makes it so unbelievable and so ridiculous.
Like, why didn't we shoot them? They were right out in the open.
Exactly. Like, they would have been dead. There were so many guys, and they had guns... They would have killed them.
Yeah, they were dead.
And like, so you remember they have that like kind of like montage where they're making all the specialized arrows?
Oh yeah.
For one, remember there's that one she's about to touch and he's like, oh, not that one or whatever. They make a big deal about that. Do they ever call back to... I mean, they use a lot of special arrows. Do we ever find out what specifically that fucking arrow was?
Well, I think it's just saying like, oh, of all these special arrows we made, we still got something bigger. Like, I don't know.
Or maybe that was the one that blew Kingpin up. Who the fuck knows?
Maybe. It actually made him limp a little bit.
It was so ridiculous, that first one he does. It's like the magnetized arrow, where it like makes everything like super magnetic and basically like all their guns like...
Right.
I mean, that's how they try to write that out, but it's so fucking ridiculous. And then just like, that whole fight, it was just like ridiculous arrow after ridiculous arrow, complete bullshit. It seemed like Looney Tunes to me.
They definitely had to have taken out more people than they had arrows.
Well, remember those ones that like shoot like a million like tranquilizer darts?
Oh, right, yeah.
So yeah.
Those took out multiples.
And by the way, the fact that they don't get hit with those is a miracle.
I remember one where like hit him and then like it wrapped this thing around him and shocked him. I was like, that's one of the ones where I was like, that you could have just used an arrow on that guy.
And I remember him hitting somebody with something that I'm like, yeah, I think that guy's dead. But I don't remember.
Well, that's the thing. They never show any blood because, it's the Disney property.
Right.
But, like, at one point, there was one guy, like, laying in the ice, and he had, like, an arrow sticking straight out of his face. I was like, that bitch is dead.
One of them, like, just, like, shot out, like, orange mustard gas or something. And, like,
He had a couple gas ones.
yeah, it was just ridiculous. And then, so when he's in the Christmas tree, he sees a fucking owl. And so the last one is they shrink with another Pym arrow. They shrink this, like, Russian guys in the van.
Yeah.
And then the owl comes and swoops that off. So are we just to believe, like, those guys are fucking killed by an owl?
Well, right, they even say, they're like, well, what are we going to do with these guys? And then the owl takes them. He's like,
oh, that sorted itself out.
like, oh, they're dead. It was ridiculous.
I mean, what did you guys think of? I mean, I when I was watching it, I just was hating every second of it.
I was driving at the same time, so I wasn't actually seeing it all happen.
Like, I'm going to go off the cliff now.
But I did notice that the scenes were shot in the dark, weren't they? A lot of the
it was at
scenes?
night, yeah.
Yeah, so I think they do that on purpose to, like, so you can't see the shitty action and stuff like that.
And at one point, like, Yelena and Cliff end up fighting on that ice, and, like, they basically end up burying the hatchet, I guess.
Right, yeah. Basically, eventually, she believes him because he knows the secret whistle.
Oh, that's right. That's what it was, the secret whistle. Oh, my God, the secret whistle.
Another thing that didn't make sense was, like, basically, the girl's mom, like, she killed the old guy or whatever, and, like, she framed the son, and they're like, they took him to prison, and then, like, he's back, like, a scene later, he's like, oh, they, I told you the evidence would exonerate me or whatever the fuck it was. And, like, he was basically in prison, back straight back out, and he's fighting everybody with a sword.
Oh, I hated that bullshit too. And that's another thing. And the cops, once again, never show up. There's all this stabbing and bullshit going on and shooting of guns. And it was just ridiculous. Like, you couldn't believe that people weren't getting killed. You couldn't believe that the cops wouldn't have been there.
Or even, like, another Avenger or something.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just...
Yeah, it was
ridiculous.
It was a mess.
I hated it. I hated that last episode. Like, up until then, I just thought the show was bland. That last episode made me hate it.
Also, doesn't that show take place in New York?
Yeah.
So then Spider-Man should have, like, noticed some of that shit going down too, right?
I mean, that stuff I can kind of forgive because I'm like, that's just how comics and stuff work. Like, they have the team book and then they have the solo book. And this is where you get the solo story. And that stuff I'm okay with. But, I mean... there would have been cops there.
Also, part of me is like, how do you, like, he's part of a well-known group. How did he fly under the radar for 5 years just killing motherfuckers? And how did they just, like, welcome him back and be like, Clint's back?
Well, I mean, because his identity is not really ever exposed. Like, Natasha knows.
He just flies under the radar.
Maybe some of the other Avengers know and let it go. But, the world at large, of course, doesn't know, so...
I don't know. Anyway, it's a hot mess.
And he makes it home for Christmas.
Yeah.
And he lets her have the name Hawkeye.
It would have been a good idea if they just killed him. That would have been the Christmas ending.
Yeah, somebody to carry on the legacy of Hawkeye. Like, I could see them play that out.
He made it home in a fucking casket.
Right? A gun.
My only weakness.
The old bullet allergy.
You know what would be great if, like, it ended up where, like, the only way he could save his life at the end was, like, a split decision where he, like, picked up a gun, and then he's like, this whole time, guns were the answer.
It's kind of weird.
I wasted so many years.
It's weird because, like, I'm like this split thing here where I'm like, Batman's like the best superhero because he's just a man. And then like Clint comes along and I'm like, this fucking piece of shit human.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
I was kind of thinking overall, like these Marvel shows, the fact that they are, most of them have only been 6 episodes. The episodes aren't, especially when you factor in the credits, aren't even an hour. Like they're usually 30 or 40 minutes. So you really think about it. Spider-Man No Way Home was like a 2.5 hour movie.
Yeah.
Hawkeye, all episodes put together, is probably a little longer than that, but probably not like substantial. Yeah. So it's like, is Marvel really even taking advantage of the television medium by making these shows?
I mean, I'm guessing because it's a Marvel name and so many people, they have such a fan base, like probably tying in the subscriptions on one side and movies on the other side is probably working. I mean, they're making so much money, but
I mean, and also
does that mean would you get Disney or HBO, if it wasn't for these little specials popping out?
I know, but like the other thing is like Loki and WandaVision had some, and even Winter Soldier had like some special effects in there, and like Hawkeye had some, but I think this show would have been relatively cheap to produce, so It seems like they could have easily made more.
Right. When it jumped the shark, it was bad. They did it like a way you just don't like.
Yeah, part of me wonders like if they did give it more room to breathe, would they have done more or less of the stupid shit?
Yeah, I don't know. It was kind of what I was expecting, because on all these 6 episodes,
it was definitely worse than what I was expecting.
Pretty much, they're kind of the way they do it is like you get a couple episodes that are kind of slow, you have rising action or whatever, and then you have like this big blowout at the end. And that's the formula they've been rolling with, and it makes sense, but
I don't know, Hawkeye just isn't fun to watch. Like, the character is not intriguing to me, he's not funny, like...
That is the thing, you don't really feel invested.
What did you guys think, though, of the Kate Bishop character?
Okay, but kind of the same.
Yeah, I didn't think... Yeah, I didn't
It's not
really
like
her that
super
much.
invested, I guess.
Yeah.
She's maybe at least a little more lively than Hawkeye.
Yeah. She's more like happy and fun to watch, Hawkeye's just like this miserable guy who's always like, oh, my body hurts and I shoot arrows.
Yeah. Did you guys watch like the last episode too? They had like for their end credit scene, they did like an extended version of that Captain America musical.
Oh, kind of unfortunately. That's another thing is like in the beginning there's that musical and like he's sitting there and he shuts off his hearing aid. I was kind of like, why is he even there? He doesn't like it.
Well, his kids were there. It was more for them,
It
I
was
think.
for the family.
Yeah.
But like, he was kind of getting emotional when Natasha came out or whatever.
Yeah, I guess so. I forgot to ask, not that it really matters, but usually with like Spider-Man in movies, we do, what would you give it a scale 1 to 10?
Spider-Man, I'd give a 9 out of 10.
Spider-Man, I'd roll in like a B plus, an 8 maybe.
I was thinking like a 7.5, but yeah, I liked it. What about Hawkeye?
I don't know.
4 out of 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably like 5 or 6.
Yeah, I'm thinking like a 4, man. Like I said, like
I wasn't expecting much, so my expectations weren't broken.
Mine too. My expectations weren't all that high.
My expectation was completely hated.
My expectation was meh, and then when I saw that last episode, it went sub meh. So,
but I'm hoping the Kingpin isn't dead. That's my big hope.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping
coming out of this.
too.
That's my hope.
Yeah, I hope so too.
I just hope they align him closer to the Kingpin and Daredevil rather than this.
Yeah. I mean, what he went through was ridiculous. Like, yeah, straight hit by a car, gets up.
I mean, yeah, they got to they have to tell us that he's a metahuman because otherwise it doesn't make any fucking sense.
Yeah.
This was the worst of the Marvel shows so far.
Oh, by far.
I didn't like Captain America.
You know what? this one was neck and neck with me with Captain America until that last episode, and then I disliked that last episode so much that it sinks it below for me. So yeah, in conclusion, Spider-Man, yay. Hawkeye, nay.